as we say goodbye to 2023, and the years do go by a little more quickly than they used to. I know I always heard that, but as you get older, it really is true. A month seems like a week now. When you were a kid and you were in school, it seemed like just getting to Friday afternoon or getting to the end of the day because you had a big game later that day or whatever seemed like an eternity. Can you remember as a kid sitting in those classrooms and just saying, is it ever going to be 3 o'clock? Well, now a week goes by in the snap of a finger. A month goes by. You write down, hey, it's January. Next thing you know, it's March. Next thing you know, it's August. Football season starts. Now it's week 16. It just flies by. And another year has flown by. There's only a couple of days left in 2023. And let's be honest, we here in New York have been waiting a long time for a championship. And I know all that is usually pinned on the Yankees and the idea of the Yankees getting back to the World Series because it is a pinstripe birthright. Okay. And the expectations are always right there. But let's be honest. We've been waiting a long time now in this town for a championship from somebody, not just the Yankees. And yes, it has been a long time since the Yankees have paid a visit to the World Series. We know that. And that obviously is the goal this year, as it is every year. This year, they're taking a little more drastic action in trying to make that a reality. But it's been a very long time, and it just highlights just how disappointing 2023 was. When you look back at 2023 and you say, what were the biggest stories in 2023 in New York? Well, hey, if I asked 100 people, 99, I'm never going to say 100 because there's always one guy floating out in the ozone, but 99 would say the arrival of Aaron Rodgers. Let's be honest. There hasn't been a sports story like this or a personality like this in New York in a very, very long time. It was the biggest rumor. It then became the biggest reality, and then it became the coldest dose of reality as he went down that opening night and turned this whole season into chaos. But we have not seen a story of that magnitude in terms of before he came, the expectations that he was coming, the months that went on, and then his prominence as a story and as a personality. He was news every day. He was news after he got injured every day. He has been news round the clock since he got here, even before he got here. So there's no question the biggest story in this town was the arrival of Aaron Rodgers. And I think it will be the biggest story for as long as he calls the Jets his football home. The second biggest story clearly was the complete collapse of the Yankees and the Mets. Let's be honest. Everyone went into 23 with guarded optimism around the Yankees, but there's always optimism around the Yankees. And real optimism around the Mets. Yes, the year had ended in disappointment. Everybody felt, and it was almost, considered to be a foregone conclusion that the Mets would get to the postseason and with their pitching would just dominate, and we watched the pitchers fall completely on their face. And then this year turned into an utter nightmare. The Mets, just an embarrassment all season, finishing 29 games behind the Braves, 75-87, obviously costing Buck his job. Just a terrible season and so below expectations, not even approaching expectations. As a matter of fact, on the complete other end of the dial. That's how bad it was for the Mets in 2023. It could not be more disappointing. And equally disappointing and almost stunningly bad were the Yankees, who were fortunate that they didn't have, believe it or not, a losing season, finishing 82-80, just keeping their heads above that creeping water, 19 games behind the surging Orioles, who put it all together and won over 100 games, but just not even competitive. Barely finishing with a winning record. Doing it in the first digit that gets them out of the 500 or below 500 mark. I mean, that disappointing a season. So the colossal collapse, the incredible collapse of both teams was without question story number 2. Now, I linked the Rodgers in with the football and equity, the football that and reality and everything that went on in the season for the Jets and the Giants. Story number 3, I'd say it's 2 things. One, the terrible play on the field of both the Giants and the Jets. The Jets, somewhat expected after the injury to Rodgers. We knew it was going to be tough. It was even tougher than we thought for their offense and for their coaches. They are an inept 5-9 and just playing out the string. Always trying to create a story where there is none, but it's a story in futility is what it is. As for the Giants, just a terrible season. After all the positives of Dable's first year, the terrific touch by the defensive coordinator, the surprising play, the come-from-behind victories, the playoff win, all that in year 1, and then almost a complete collapse in year 2. Then the DeVito story gave them a couple of weeks before this weekend's crash and burn in New Orleans brought them back to reality, and now a couple of games with the Eagles will continue that reality for them as they finish the season. I say that terrible football performance by the Jets and the Giants is story number 3, and equally with it, at story number 3 is the trade for Soto. Because not only does it bring a big star to the Yankees and really have you believing that the Yankees have returned to their more aggressive ways financially. But you now have Judge and Soto back-to-back as 2 of the most dynamic, clearly top 5, maybe even top 4 or 3 in all of baseball back-to-back in the lineup. But also the idea that the Yankees have finally admitted the error of their ways and now brought in some left-handed bats to balance this lineup. Is it perfect? No. Do they need a leadoff hitter? Yes. But that story, important because of the arrival of Soto and what he means, but also that it, without question, sends the message that the Yankees have returned from the hibernation they have been in recent years, especially financially. And that's a big positive and means better days are ahead. Those would be the stories of this very disappointing, and it has been an incredibly disappointing 2023 season. If you're going to ask on the positive side, the guys who were the best performers in New York this year, well, he's not my favorite. And if you listen to my podcast or listen to my programs, you know that. But Jarrett Cole deserves to be first. He had that good a year. It would have been even better if the team was any good. That's how bad the Yankee offense was this year. But he had a terrific season. 15-4, struck out 220 batters and over 200 innings, had a whip under 1, pitched consistently, brilliantly all season. So very deserving. You know, I thought Alonso had a good year. I thought that there were other guys who had good years. Judge, when he played, but he missed too many games for it to be the dynamic year to follow up the great year of the year before. The guy I would put behind Cole in the New York performers would be Brunson for this reason. He came in and clearly established himself, not only as a star, but as a leader of this team and a harbinger of better days ahead for the Knicks. They're not there. They can't beat a good team in the playoffs. They can't match up against the best teams in the league. We know that. They're still that player away from being a serious contender, but they have put a lot of the really just ugly, dysfunctional ways that have so much been a part of the Knicks in recent years, and Brunson has ended all that with his consistency, with his leadership, with just his persona. So I would put him behind Cole in terms of the New York performer for last year. Clearly, without any question, though, the personality of the year, without any question, and probably the biggest we've seen around here for a very, very long time. Now, this is New York. There are always big stars in New York. New York can handle multiple big stars, and we've had a million of them. But nobody has come in and just stormed into the town and made himself such a big part of the everyday conversation as Aaron Rodgers has done. He was the talk of the town before he came. He was the talk of the town when he got here. He made himself very, very visible by going to all the events and making himself very much part of the fabric of this city. He was out and about. He was visible. He was everything you would want in the superstar player. You heard from him. His message was clear, and then he went down with the injury. But you know what? He didn't go away. We have listened to him chronicle his recovery like we have never heard an athlete chronicle a recovery ever before. And that's why he has become the personality who never goes away. And I think it will be that way for every day he is part of the New York sports scene, which will be until he finally bids the Jets adieu, whether it's next year, the year after. I don't think it would be past 2 years, but hey, wonders never cease. But clearly he has been the number one personality in the big city. And that makes him a very, very big personality everywhere. And he has been that front and center since the day he arrived, like I said, even before he arrived. Now, wrapping up 23, there's no question. 24 doesn't even have to try to be better. It's got to be better. We have some very talented hockey players in this town. There's no question. As we record this, the Rangers are doing very well. Maybe they have a nice run in them this year. The Knicks are doing what we would expect them to do. The optimism is there, although it's guarded and it's under control. It's not championship optimism, but it's optimism that better days are coming. And the revival that everyone hopes for, both in baseball and in football, after this disastrous season. And let's be honest, the baseball was as bad as it could be, and the football was even worse. So to say this year has been disappointing would be the understatement of the year. And 2024 can't arrive quickly enough. And it guarantees to be better. Because I can tell you this, can't be worse. I wish you a happy and healthy new year. a prosperous one, a healthy one, which is the most important thing to you and your families. And we'll talk to you soon.